Okay, interweb, this is my second um, video that's going to talk about white box. So the first one goes up to page 24. This starts on page 25. I start talking about equipment, and I refer back to things I have written out along the way so you can kind of see what's going on. But it's kind of my way of kind of, I guess, paying homage to this book, which is very creatively done by Charlie Mason and obviously started by Matt Finch. So these games that you come out of the OSR, they have a big importance, and obviously, like I said, it's kind of a gateway for playing other RPGs because this is like the grandfather of them all. And when you play this one, it's so much fun to get kids involved in a game like this if you keep it simple enough, right? This game, once again, it centers around D20 and a 1D6 for all your helpful rolling needs. And a lot of times when I have kids like fight in battle, I make them roll the 1D20 and the 1D6 at the same time. It's like a transition. They roll both of them and it makes it a little fun, okay? Other thing I said, if you do skill checks, they're sometimes roll unders with the 1D20, and that proves to be quite fun too as well. So let's look at this. So equipment list, and I'm going to refer back to things I have put together. It says you start up with 3d6 times 10 gold pieces, right? 1 gold piece equals 10 silver pieces, 100 copper pieces equals 1 gold piece. So it's a 10-fold conversion here, right? Referees encouraged to include additional items or equipment. The only thing I really add to this thing are darts. Darts are in first edition D&D, and actually they're in Swords of Wizardry Complete. But a dart is a great instrument for a magic user. If they have a high dexterity, they can throw 3 of them and they do 1d3 worth of damage. So it's something to consider. If you want to stick anything in there, a weapon of choice would be that. The only other thing I do is when they're actually doing damage, if they're two-handed doing damage, they get a bonus of +1. Okay, so that's the other thing, and I'll instruct you along the way where that actually occurs, right? So starting off with equipment weight, I do something a little different. Okay, if you have it, and this is a weird way of doing this, very easy for the population. Okay, so you could do it any way you want, and the reason why I do it this way is because it's easy for people to look at it. You can carry, you can have armor. So I've just said armor is easily distributed on your body. Okay, so we don't care about that, right? You have a weapon in hand, right? And you could carry 2 weapons on a belt. This is gimme stuff, right? Okay, and I could sit there and say, well, weapon in hand. Let's say I have a 2-handed sword, right? And 2 weapons on the belt. I might put a dagger, right? And this is where it's sort of interesting. You could say I have a bow and a quiver. Okay, this is automatic for like fighters. This is what you can have, and the rest you can carry as many items, right, as your strength score. Why do I do it that way? It's easy. Honestly, it's just easy. And then you adjudicate. Like if they have 2 empty bags, I consider that 1 item. You know what I'm saying? If they have something like belladonna garlic and something else, I consider all the herbs and spices as 1 item. Okay. And the reason why I do that, it saves so much in trying to figure out the weight of each individual thing. I think it's just kind of very, very simple way of doing things. If I grab something, for instance, let me grab my sheet that I have been using, or I would say note card for doing all this stuff. I'm going to clear this off for a second, and you can see what I'm going to do here. If you have either pack A or pack B, if I count the items, 1, 2, 3, I count this as 1 item, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is a 9-item pack. Okay, I put the food and the water. Food's all together and the water separate because the water skin will have weight, right? Once again, this one, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? 5 would be the actual pints, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. This is an 11-unit pack. So you might say I want B, you can carry more things, you get the lantern, but you might say it weighs too much. So, and then you might say, well, my strength is not that good. I'm a magic user, I got a strength of 6. Well, then you're going to cross stuff out here of stuff you don't want to carry. You might say, well, I'm not going to carry the rope. I'm not going to carry this. You cross it back, and then the money still stays the same. I know that's crucial in heart, but that's unless you want to like be fair and say, okay, you're getting at a reduced cost. Once again, let's say I had a fighter with a strength of 15, highly suggested, right? I get now 6 more items, right? So if I get my sword, right? And I get this is my melee in hand, I get 2 things on my waist, right? So these things are all taken into account, right? So I have my sword, bow, arrows, and then let's say I'm going to have a dagger, something, up close and personal, right? That's it. And then I grab, let's say, chainmail, right? So this is all taken care of. I consider this distributed. You use 9 items. So this means you still have 6 more things you can pick up along the way to stick in your backpack. It's just an easy way to do it. Like I said, you can do it any way you want. You want to count each individual thing. Like I said, most people get bored with the accounting thing. I don't do it. There's probably some other game that's done this. I just don't know which one it is because I don't know all games, right? But I just think it's so much an easier way of taking care of something. Like I said, you adjudicate certain things. And you say, okay, well, I consider the hammer to go with the spikes. This is all one thing. That's fine. Then you can do that. That makes it easier for you, right? All right, let's go back to the actual book. So I'm going to put and I'm going to move this over and back to white box. Okay, so weapon damage is originally it was all just 1d6, but now they get a little bonus, right? Or even a little bit less depending on the item you have. Like I said, I set this all up, and if someone says I want a grappling hook, let's say, or holy symbol, or what all this other stuff that you might, I want a mirror, then that's add-on stuff they got to pay for. But the general, this is what you get. I have it on my character sheet. It's kind of the way I like to do it. I was playing a game, actually it was solo, which was kind of fun. They went through, ransacked, it was Morgan's Fort, which was sort of fun. It's a basic fantasy. I was playing basic fantasy with this, worked out perfectly fine. They went back and got a cart, they got a mule, and they started loading it up with a bunch of other stuff. And then they got some more hirelings as they got bigger. People watching the campsite hired a couple guards. So you could see that, going back to town and acquiring stuff makes it a whole lot easier. The one thing that's really expensive for the magic user is that spell book, okay? I've had magic users not have money to get it. If you can't get it, if you don't want to like will one to someone or is granted as being part of his college, I let them pick up, how would you say, a map or scroll case with parchment for 3. It's temporary. So that's something you could try. You can sit there and say, well, the guy only has 90 gold pieces. He's got to get a backpack filled with stuff for 50. He should get a staff and a dagger. He doesn't have enough to get a spell book. If he doesn't get a spell book, you tell him you're allowed to have a scroll and a scroll. You only have 1 spell anyways. But as soon as he makes enough money, gets back to town, he should buy himself a spell book. It's an easy way to do it. Like I said, it's your game, and you're just trying to make it as much fun as for the players as it is for you. You don't want to be a rule stickler and people hate being with you, right? Like 1 pound of garlic, like I said, like that's a bit much. And I think they have belladonna here, do they not? Wolfsbane. Okay, they add that a bunch. Like I put those like herbs together, that's counted as 1 for a strength lift, right? I've never got to the point where using ships. I think I GM'd one where the main of Dread we're using a ship. So kind of interesting, right? So like I said, you gotta have descending or ascending armor class. Ascending is easier for people to understand. Descending requires the chart. And if you're doing batch rolling, if you have 10 people playing a game, which I do, and if you're rolling, everybody has a colored dice and you roll everyone's dice to see who gets hit, it's much easier to use ascending, just being honest, right? And then you have how to calculate armor class, and most of it's just the higher the better if you're using ascending, or descending armor class is a little different. I like descending armor class, I just don't use it. Now it's kind of hard to understand, why would you use it? I said, because I don't think other people like it. Just because I like it doesn't mean other people are going to like it. And I know you should play a game you like or game master the game you enjoy, but I think some of it is like if people are begrudgingly playing the game that you're forcing them to play, it just sends a bad vibe. So you got to say, what does it really add to go descending? If it makes you feel better, that's great. But if it's something that you're doing just to be a grog nerd, then you might want to reconsider your position. But that's just me, right? Anyways, so ascending armor class, so it's easy. It starts at 10. In fact, I use ascending armor class, and I still use the monster manual, first edition monster manual for many things because it has so many more monsters in it. And whatever the armor class is, I just subtract it from 20. So it's a really easy way of doing things. I know they're like, well, maybe it's 19 or something like that. I just do it from 20, so it's easier for my brain to function. So if you see a monster with the armor class of 3 in the original monster manual, it just make it a 17. And you can still play it. Anywhere it says hit dice in the original monster manual, you simply just change it to a 6-sided hit dice. And if you want to be really quick and stealthy with all that stuff, if you want to do computation real quick, it's just 3 hit points per hit dice. So if you have a 3 hit dice monster in the monster manual, the first edition or advanced D&D, it's just 9 hit points. So if you want to, a lot of times it's the speed at which you do things at the table has a lot to do with how you keep the action flowing. I believe in action should flow and be very organic, and people enjoy it much better. And so this one, obviously it's saying 12 plus 7 is 19. So descending value should add up to 19. I just do 20 when I'm doing it. It's easier on my brain. I know it's not that much of a difference. I'm pretty good with numbers, shouldn't have a problem, but I just do 20. I think I just do it because I think for the players it may be easier too. So this is a hiring assistance. This is where your charisma will kick in. Very important. And for them, it's down towards the end. You have all your hiring guys down here, things to consider, right? And we'll talk more about that. Like a torchbearer is really good if you want people to walk around and not have a torch in their hand or a lantern. So you hire this guy, we call ours Steve all the time, or some really Phil or Steve. And sometimes they get killed randomly because I roll a 6-sided dice to find out who took the attack. And sometimes they die and you got to pay restitution. But they're nice to have, right? Men at arms, they're really nice to have. Soldiers or whatever you want to call them. They're really good to have on the field for when you start to, you have a magic user and he wants to be protected, okay? So these are things taken into consideration. Let's look at the melee weapons themselves, okay? I just, anytime you use two-handed weapon, I give the weapon a +1 because you get added strength to the other hand. So here's a battle axe, it's two-handed, that's why it's 1d6 +1. Just a hand axe is just 1d6, okay? But it can also be thrown. There's a distance it can throw. It's down here in this other chart that says how far something will be thrown. So a hand axe can go up to 10 feet, okay? So, and that's rate of fire is just 1. We'll talk about that in a second, right? All the rate of fire stuff and how it's important. But everything's 1d6. Daggers have a depreciation of 1d6 -1. The lowest you can get is 1, though. You can't stab somebody and get a 0. It doesn't make sense, right? So I always say that the least damage you can do is a 1. If you have a strength bonus, you know, that it's going to help quite a bit, right? The money on the end of this thing, like I said, they have the weights on the end of it. But like I said, I do my thing a little differently to make it easier on people. But the cost is where really the things really start to add up, especially in the beginning when you first get started. The spear, I sometimes do set against charge and a charged weapon. That can happen on 2 items only, right? Yeah, 2 items I let that happen was a polearm and a spear. If you decide to charge your enemy, you can double your damage, but you get a reduction in your armor class, right? So if you have a 14 armor class, and if you're charging to hit your guy, your armor class goes down by 2 because you're less likely to be able to defend, okay? So you go 1d6 +1 because it's two-handed, and you roll it and you multiply it by 2. So you can do a lot of damage that way, except that you're leaving yourself exposed for an attack, right? Same thing with the polearm. In this case, it's 1d6 +1. Like I said, you would probably make that a +2 because I give you a bonus if it's two-handed, right? But the problem, once again, is when you're looking at this is that you leave yourself open for an additional attack. If you set against charge, the only things I let really kind of get set against charge, and like I said, I just make it the spear, which I think is probably I don't know why it was so underappreciated in Dungeons and Dragons. The spear is a beautiful weapon because actually I've seen all these videos. I forgot the name of the guy who does them. It is the weapon of choice, especially against swords, stuff like that. You're going to be likely to strike. Set against charge does double damage. But once again, you have to declare it before something comes charging towards you. And they have to be charging for it to happen. So you have to kind of read the minds of what's going on. And we could talk more about gameplay and battle and how that works out with the dungeon master writing down what he's going to do when but also when they're deciding what they're going to do, so they don't change their minds. Part, whoa, you're setting against charge. I'm not going to charge them. No, you said you're going to do it. Go for it, right? So a staff. Every magic user should have a staff, and this is the other one that doesn't get the bonus, I think, because it's not, how would you say, an edged weapon, but it's a 1d6 in damage. Most of, like I said, being all 1d6 worth of damage makes it kind of like fairly easy. You just need 6-sided dice and 20-sided dice to see whether you hit. Here's the thing with the hirelings and hiring assistants. I haven't really ventured that much into this thing. Like I said, the best thing I got was a torchbearer, and I say a soldier, which is 5 gold pieces. Something to consider when doing these kind of things is that you can actually have someone next to you, especially if you're a magic user, to kind of keep you on the up and up. Right. Okay, here's the missile weapons. Okay. So you have the arrows, silver weapons. I count them as they're not magical, but they can attack any kind of monster that needs a magical weapon to be attacked by it. Like a ghost will be affected by a silver weapon, but it doesn't really give you a bonus to say a +1 weapon. All right, so they're nice to have. You can get any item silvered. I say that, but it costs like 4 to 5 times their value on this chart. All right, so when you look at that, you might say, wow, that's kind of a lot, but I just kind of do it. So if you get like let's say a 2-handed sword that you see way up here, where was it? Oh, too far. Okay, so 2-handed sword, come on. All right, here's 2-handed sword, it's like 15. I would definitely make that 100 gold pieces to get that silvered. And I'll make it take a couple days. So they can go out, earn a bunch of money, come back and say, I want to silver that. And then I actually roll a percentage dice on whether or not there's enough silver in town to actually get that done. Sometimes they have to bring the silver to the actual blacksmith to have it done, because it's some metallurgy involved into that to try to get the silver to anneal to the metal in such a way that it stays on. It doesn't come off every time you hit with it. So I kind of make it still kind of like a little bit of a daunting task to get something silvered, right? It's not just a guarantee. So once again, you have a hand axe you can grab and you could throw it. Crossbows, bolts. This tells you how many you get and how much they cost. But the crossbow, it's a big item. It shoots further, but the rate of fire is very slow. So most of my characters are dissuaded from actually picking that up. Crossbow light, same thing. But the thing about it was like most people acquire the longbow or the short bow based on the rate of fire, which is 2. And that's a big game changer when you're going into battle. And I make sure that they understand the monsters do have that bonus too as well. The spear, like I said before, can be thrown up to 20 feet. A sling goes up to 30 feet as well. And then you can see that they're all doing equal amount of damage, except for anything that's light or short does less damage, minimum of 1 upon hitting. Okay, so that's kind of interesting, something to take into account. It's all D6, which makes the game really easy to play. And here's your chainmail, leather, plate mail, or shield. Your choices here, pretty straightforward. This is ascending or effect on descending armor class right here. And this is, of course, the ascending armor class, which people tend to like a whole lot better, and the cost. None of my players ever can seem to afford plate mail right off the shoot because a bunch of their money goes to a pack. They all have to buy the pack, right? So that's going to get rid of that. And then you're into, so a lot of them end up with leather armor off the bat. They got to come back to buy new. They kind of like doing that, honestly. So this talks about how to play the game. And I think if you got to this point, if you're reading this with me, I think you've played some version of this game, okay? It talks about gaining experience. And referees do it all differently. Some say, we'll complete this module at the end of this module or halfway through this module. Everyone's going to go up to second level. Then everybody goes. A lot of game masters make everyone ascend at the same rate. I'm all for it if it keeps down animosity or people thinking it's not fair they're going up. I've done everything, even to having giant Excel sheets to kind of let you look at this thing. This is Rapanathuk. I was doing, here's Vincent the Thief, right? You could tell this is their experience points that they added up. Here's their total experience points. Razmit the Elder, he's the magic user, Jank. As you can see, some of them did not acquire as much gold as other ones, right? This was one I was playing, and obviously this person didn't come as much as the other ones. And if he didn't come as much, he didn't inquire as much. Look at this guy. The thief just went crazy. He also died several times being out there on this thing. I keep track of this. This may be a little too much for people. I like doing it with this group because it was your actions had a big bearing on where you were going. I didn't think everybody should graduate at the same rate because, once again, not everybody's playing at the same time. It's up to you as preference. A group evolving, I think it's a nice way to make it feel more cohesive within the group. That group was a lot of fun to mess with. They were middle school kids, so they had to have a lot of incentive to do what they're going to do. Okay, looking at this. Time, big difference in time with 5e. So one round of battle, okay, a turn is essentially 10 minutes, right? And there's a combat round, which is 1 minute. So a shorter combat round is 1 minute, and a turn is like 10 minutes. This is just standard. This always goes back to advanced D&D too as well, okay? So a lot of times you're traveling, and I do hex travel, you know, so that takes X amount of time, and there's a lot of different ways to do it, like I said, but just as long as you keep track, at combat round, 10 combat rounds equals 10 minutes. So one combat round equals a minute. And people say, it doesn't take that long. It's 6 seconds to do a hit. I know 5e made it quite different, but I don't know exactly when it changed, honestly. But you're jockeying for position. So when you're fighting with a shield and a sword, you're hitting, there's a bunch of hits going on. They're just hits that don't count until you get a clear spot to make a hit, and that can happen only once every 60 seconds. So the combat's exhausting. It's not really taken into consideration. Probably there's so many rules anyways, it becomes unfun. But you would think swinging a giant sword that weighs, I don't know how many pounds, eventually after like 3 or 6 minutes doing it, you're gonna feel tired. Your arms can get really weighted down. So, just something to take into consideration, right? And it talks about movement. And this shows you the movement. I don't put a lot on this. It depends if they start to overburden themselves past 17 or whatever. If they're past their strength, then I start saying, yeah, they're having a hard time keeping up. And what I do is then they start, how would you say, being strained and suffering level of exhaustion. Now, this is what you can do to people that if they get tired carrying too much stuff, when they go to make a hit, when they go to fight, they get, let's say, a -2 on their rolls because they've been carrying heavy stuff for too long. They're exhausted. Like I said, this is a DM, and I tell them ahead of time before it happens. Look, if you guys keep carrying this stuff, all this gold with you, when you do have a fighting encounter, it'll be a -2 on your fighting. Let them know what's going to happen before it happens. I don't just spring it on them, because it's no fun. They didn't get a chance to make a choice, right? This is kind of cool. He delineated the idea of a careful, normal running and combat movement, which is kind of nice. And we're looking at the outdoor movement. The whole thing is like, yards and miles and these things that kind of like, it depends on how much you're going to do this in your own personal play. Like I say, I like pretty much when the people are going over land, I kind of let them just kind of go over land. And it's just normal movement, not really put much into it, unless you're being chased. And then you're like, okay, you're going this fast with this much armor on, you're getting this tired. Yeah, like I said, it still comes into play, all right? So that's one of those referees making a ruling type thing. And most doors are large, heavy, and unlocked, but hard to open. So humans can unlock them on a 1 to 6 and a 6. Dwarves and halflings have a 1 in 6 chance, right? So then I let them apply strength bonuses for doing these things. And obviously my strength bonuses are a little higher than the normal game because 17, 18 grants you a +1. You got a big guy, you can do a lot. Light in the dungeons. I kind of do what Professor Dungeon Master does. A torch lasts 4 rooms, more or less. Then you got to grab another one, and I keep track of torches. You have to have some kind of commodity that they can lose. In doing so, it makes the game more interesting. If you're running out of light, if you're running out of torches, you're running out of food, you're running out of water, you're exhausted, there has to be that certain level of pressure in the game, or it's just kind of like, well, why are we doing this kind of thing, I think if they have to leave the dungeon and come back to it, you're doing it right. Or they have to find a safe room to continue on to heal up, you're doing it right. If they can just walk all the way through it and they never have to take a rest, you did it wrong. I just don't think it's as fun. You always have to be a point like, oh my God, we have got to rest. We are going to get killed here. And let's talk about resting. And that's a 5e, you get all your hit points back. I let them roll 1 for each level. So, for example, if you have 13 hit points starting off with, and let's say you get dogged down to like, say, cut up to like 2, if you're going to rest and you didn't bind your wounds, you roll 1d6, you add that back on, and that's it. Unless you bound your wounds at the end of the actual battle and you got some back doing that, or a cleric heals you. There's ways you could do that, right? But once again, just all your hit points back, it just seems like it's too much of like just a do-over. That they tend not to play as smart because it doesn't have as much of a penalty for doing dumb things. I think they have to play smarter. It makes it a little more fun using your brain. So once again, the cool thing is, like, listing at doors, humans have a 1 and 6. Non-humans have a 2 and 6, right? If you're a thief, you get your thief bonus. So going back to the thief class, like certain these things, listening at doors, secret doors, traps, these things, the thief gets a bonus. So I'm going to scroll back to the thief, which is way back here. Thief has this thievery skill. So this adds to this. This is where I would put this in, okay? So now I'm going to go back to where I was, which is way up here, okay? So secret doors, okay, if you're a thief, you're looking for secret doors because that's all you do is look for stuff that's hiding so you can steal it. So if you're a human thief, a normal roll would be what? A 1 to 2. Well, they get a base hit of 2, so I give them a 4 on a 1d6. Some people may say that's too liberal, they're not going to miss it. Well, they'll still roll 5 and 6 now and then, and they won't find it. But they have to be actively searching for it. If not, they're not really going to find it. Elves can just find secret doors when they're looking for it, right? Or 1 to 6 that they're just passing. But these are things to take into consideration. Traps, same thing. Dwarves get the bonus on the traps. Elves get the bonus on secret doors. So reading this thing kind of makes sense. Everybody has their niche, right? So this is a little bit of how to play. Somewhere 5e kind of crippled the game a little bit. I used to have friends, they said, I search for traps. Well, what do you mean by search for traps? Well, I just search for traps. If you're a game master that's describing an entire room and the contents of the room, what they see, oh, there's an altar, there's several candles up there, and there's 2 different sconces on 2 of the different walls. You want people to turn around and say, well, I'm going to go over and going to examine the sconce and see if turning it opens up something or changes something. That means you're searching for a secret door or trap or something, right? Just say, I search for traps, roll a dice. Well, I've given you a description of the room. Why aren't you using it? So this is a difference in style of play. And it's different for different people. As a game master, you have to kind of try to give as much information as possible. And you always put something out there that has some, I mean, you might put out 5 things. All right. There must be something out of those 5 things that's going to help them get to something. Or why mention it? You know, well, I just try to get them all paranoid, and, you know, it gives them something to think about. And sometimes they'll get stuck on something. You can say, well, I'm going to let you know that you found what was important so you guys can move on, because, yeah, they can still say, well, I'm still turning the other sconce around in a circle. It's not doing anything. Well, then I try to move it back and forth out the wall. It's okay. You guys found the one thing. You guys can move on. So you could do that too to kind of keep the game going forward. You don't want to fix this. 4 rooms later, still think about that sconce they had to turn, right? I have a different way of doing battle. I talk about several different ways of doing battle. Swords and wizardry style. This is actually really kind of nice. 1 roll is made for each side. Okay, first of all, you find out if anybody's surprised. If they roll 1 or 2 on a d6, they're surprised. That's either side, right? Determine the initiative. Each of them roll a d6. The one with the higher number goes first, right? So then you do missile fire, casting, movement, melee. Results take effect. Parry, loss, next. They take and the rolls are curious. So when I really thought about this, when I started doing Swords of Wizardry Complete, and I changed it to my way of doing things, this is exactly kind of what I do. I didn't really know I was doing it this way. The only thing I did was the party with initiative acts first, and I just do it in descending dexterity of the party members. And this is pretty much what I use, and it seems to work very well for all age groups. So you could do it a million different ways. Sometimes the thief usually has the highest dexterity, or the magic user, and they say, well, I'm going to hold back. I'm going to let someone else attack, or they're going to come around and I'm going to stay in the dark and sneak around. So they're going to use their turn to speak. You know, so you think they always attack first? Well, not really. Their motions might be first, but they're not always are the one that they attack first. It's something to think about. So this is a statement of intent before they roll the initiative. Okay, and they do their little thing here. Each side rolls a d6. If it rolls a tie, is considered act simultaneously. I think that's just too confusing and not worth it to me. I just let all ties go to the party. Why not? I just kind of do it. It's random anyway. So they do this. It gives them their incentive. I have control over all the monsters. I control pretty much the entire universe. If there's a tie, they get to have it. So I do that, and it just seems so much easier. It's less things for me to think about, right? And here's one that gives an alternative sequence, right? Uh, Roll for surprise. Anyone gets not surprised gets a free combat round. In order, I do that. Of course, if you're surprised to the party, you get a free shot, right? Roll for initiative. Follow the sequence described. So this is any prepared spells are cast. It takes a full combat to prepare a spell, but once they're prepared ahead of time, that this all of a sudden next missiles are fired. Then the melee takes place. This is the swords and wizardry complete version of doing it. Like I said, it depends on the size of your party and what people like to do and how much you want to keep track of it. I found it to be, like I said, I just do the other one because it's the easier thing, right? Here's our one dice so far, D20. Everything's been talking about D6s up to here. D20s are two hits. You add your bonuses, right? And this is ascending armor class, the quick method, which I highly suggest doing if you have kids, because that way you don't have to look in tables and stuff like that. Um, it's pretty easy to do, right? So then they give really cool attack matrices, okay, which is kind of cool. You still have them. It's on one page. Isn't that sweet? Uh, Once again, it's like page 74 of the DMG from 1978 or 79. Here you have it on what page is this? 37 of the fantastic medieval adventure game. Still one page attack matrices, right? And it's you do it dollars to donut. You do what you like, right? They say once you get down to zero, you're unconscious. The less harsh method. Once again, got game master discretion. What do you want? And how is it going to affect characters? How's it going to affect morale within the actual playing party if everyone's getting killed off? Or some people might like a game where really early in Adventure, I don't think people are too signed into their character. They don't care if they get whacked, right? But if this person's like 5, 6 level, let them go down to 0, have to get them resurrected, give them a priest in town to go back and do the. I mean, I'm not saying nerf the battles and nerf the killing. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying that you don't want them to dislike the game and never play it again because, well, you took the fun out of it. Right? This is for fun. We're doing this and we're having fun with it. I like that picture. That's cool. So here's something. Healing, right? 1 hit point per day. Dang, 4 weeks it takes to get all your hit points back, regardless of how many you lost. That's tough. That's why magical healing's so important, or healing potions. Great to find, right? So I do the binding of wounds. So if you get hurt and if you bind the wounds right after battle, you get back 1d6 hit points, right? Even if you do have a cleric, and the cleric can heal too, because he's only going to be able to heal one person for 1d6 plus 1. Everyone else is kind of out of luck. Some of us can bind the wounds. So fighters are going to be more likely to be the ones binding up their wounds because they got to keep running with it, right? This is cool how he says some referees view hit points as the abstract measurement of a character's stamina, with the attack that brings the characters to 0 hit points representing actual significance below from that weapon. As such, they may allow characters to heal more points per day of rest. Yeah, I don't know. I don't do that, but different strokes, different folks. Do what you want, right? Invisible. I think in 5e you're pretty much attacking with disadvantage. I just say it's a -4. It's kind of easy. Oil, you can be thrown, right? It does 1d6 damage. It's actually burning damage. Melee attacks, missile attacks. I think you guys pretty much know this. Morale. Now this is fun, right? Certain characters get morale check, right? Referees should be used morale to determine the actions of loyalty to hirelings and NPCs. So this is an interesting way of doing morale, okay? And you just do a certain roll. It's a 2d6, obviously. It goes from 2 or less. You could actually do a 1d12. I tend to use 6-side dice for all this. So this is actually, maybe it's a 3d6 with this one. I can't remember. I must have missed that. Hmm. I guess it's 2. 2 or less. How could it be less than 2? That's interesting. Okay, if there's subtracted stuff, maybe. Was this a D20? Okay, referee's option. So I don't know. I guess you could roll a d20. I think 12 and above, they're going to attack. I don't know. Like I said, this is kind of like a referee discretion on doing something like that. That's interesting. They don't tell you what you're supposed to roll to get this number. Yeah, because a 2 would be what? 2d6 is the lowest. And why would you say 2 or less? Because you can't get less if you're using 2d6. Interesting. They have a thing on jousting. I have not used that. Here's the thing on spells. And now we have something on loyalty. I like loyalty. So here's the one that's really, this is a 3d6 table. I knew one of them was 3d6. So they talk about how loyal your party members are. And I got another thing on hirelings. You could probably go back and take a look at it. I determine loyalty based on certain things that are going on and certain things they've seen. Like if they see you paying restitution when someone falls, like they have to go back and pay their family, that increases your loyalty of your party members. And the DM keeps track of this, or a game master, to make sure things are on the up and up. Saving throws and alternative saving matrices. Like I said, just keep in mind when all this was originally put together, okay, it's made up. So there's no reason why these numbers are any better than any other, like 15, well, death and poison. These already take into consideration what is subtracted or your bonuses. So you could use this. I just think it makes it a little more cumbersome and a little harder for players to keep track of. It's always a matter of your playing character. And I say that because you want to make sure the game has like, and some people like crunch, they like things all different and all that stuff, then that's the party you work towards. Some people think they need a lot more abilities and things and they want feats. I mean, that's totally up to you how much you want to do as a game master. But keep in mind, and I agree, and I think Professor Dungeon Master, I've seen a lot of his videos, he's great. You as a game master are the one that designs this world, and you put your time into putting things together, orchestrating and asking people to come to your house. Well, maybe not right now during the whole pandemic, but or you're playing online, you're putting us all together. If you're up front about the rules going into things, you can play the game you want to play and people will have fun because you have confidence in what you're doing as a game master. I think that's the most crucial part of this whole entire thing. It's almost like teaching, and I'm teaching for over 20 years. And I teach my method. I do it different than a lot of teachers, and some teachers do it this way. And it's how you are as a teacher. I don't think there's a point where it's just what you're familiar with and how it comes across. And students love consistency. I do certain things a certain way, and they love it because they know what they're walking into. And then they could just get into the content. They don't have to get into the formulaic sense of what's due now, what we have to do. And it's a lot of strain on a student. That's the same thing with game mastering. You don't want to strain your student. You don't want to strain your player. You want them to enjoy the game in the content and less into the little minutia thing because it detracts from all the cool stuff that's occurring. So I think I'm almost at the stopping part. We're almost at the 40-minute mark. I think the rest of this is going to be pretty straightforward. We can take a look at this. This is in the spell section. I will say a couple things about the spells. They I have, and I think it's kind of put in here the same way. The clerics basically, they do not have to prepare their spells ahead of time because it comes from divine ordinance. It comes from a deity, right? So if they said, I'm going to cure light wounds, it's the one spell I really know, they can do it. However, if they turn around and decide that they're going to do something totally different, it's a first level spell. I'm not going to cure light wounds this time, I'm going to detect magic. I let them try that. Why not? What's it hurt? So in doing so, maybe sometimes I make them roll a d6, right? And let's say it's a 50-50, that their god responds to their cry to detect magic on an item. So 1, 2, 3, it's good. 4, 5, 6 is bad. Sometimes I tell them that, right? And sometimes I say, well, roll a d20 and see how well it worked. The higher the number, the better this thing's going to work for you. So like, once again, if you kind of tell them ahead of time what's going to happen prior to them making that decision, they can say, no, I'll stay with the cure light wounds. There's a chance it might not work. Right? That's good. That's what makes it fun. People like risk. People like to figure out things going on, right? This is the most fundamental broke down spells that you can have. Level 6 critical spells, only God knows. Get it from the Player's Handbook, first edition. Because there's a bunch in there, or you can find other ones you want to stick in there, or you can take some of the magic user spells and add them in there. Like I said, it's sort of fun. I like this because this is enough to have fun. And that's what you want. Enough to have fun, you can expand on it. Magic user spells, like I said, the one that you always get, you do not have to buy it, is read magic. You could always read. I give that one right automatically, and then everything else comes after it. They can't do any other spell unless they can read the magic, right? So I tend to give them something. Like I said, there's no magic missile here, which is kind of rough, right? Look at that. First edition, Gary Gygax was against the magic user getting magic. Their first real, how would you say, punch you in the throat spell, right? It was Fireball. Web, they web people up, right? That's a great spell. But look at this. Most of these spells are not really attacking spells. Sleep, beautiful spell. That is awesome. You run into a bunch of kobolds, take them down. Sleep, right? If you have two first level spells, I'd go sleep and I would go sleep again. The other one is detect magic. All these other stuff's great. You know what I'm saying? Sometimes you might want to give your magic user a magic missile spell loaded up in a wand or a staff. You get to cast 2 magic missiles a day. You might say, why would you do that? Well, I mean, it depends what kind of game you want to play. The magic user, he is pretty weak in the beginning, right? Fireball, that's the big game changer down there when you hit 3rd level, right? But most of these things, and really, I think it's Fireball and Lightning Bolt. These 2 things, 3rd level, that's when they become the guys that can do some damage, right? So, and then you get the more fun ones coming out. Like I said, they get a whole bunch more as they go up to 6th level, a whole bunch of fun things. But these are the descriptions of the spells are very, very, very small, right? Look how little these things are. Animate the dead. I mean, it's in alphabetical order, which is nice. Tells you the level. Magic user 6th level. It's a caster. Lasts for 2 hours. Animal grow 2 hours. So all these things are kind of fun. But I said, like I said, the descriptions are, and they tell you why. They don't tell you that much. So your imagination takes over. You can determine, as a referee, you can roll 6-sided dice and say, well, this is actually going to last a little longer for you, whatever. You know what I'm saying? Charm person works until dispelled. That's pretty wild. You can charm somebody forever. Take on a wife and they don't even know it until later on somebody accidentally gets rid of the spell on you. Now you're in trouble, right? So this is fun. Like I said, the spell descriptions are really short, right? Here's Cure Light Wounds, right? Just 1d6 plus 1. And you could also, if you're an evil cleric, do Cause Light Wounds, if you're into that. I'm kind of not into playing the evil characters. So all these things are big choices here. And you can come down after you get past all these things. Lots of spells, lots and lots of spells, right? It's all in one book for doing all this. He's cool looking, isn't he? Looks like he's got to go do some damage. Here, talks a little bit about running the game, designing an adventure. You know what I'm saying? Now there's so many free. Dyson Logos has all these amazing maps. Grab your thing in there, grab a theme, start putting stuff together, creating a campaign, and see where it takes you. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways you can do this. Wilderness, I have some of my characters strictly like the wilderness adventures. Seems like so much more fun for them. And yeah, you can. I mean, this tells you how to stock your dungeon, how to make it work, which totally makes sense. Lots and lots of fun. Like I tend to grab some pre-designed things I kind of put together, or I grab like a advanced D&D module and put this in. Then they have a bestiary here in the back with all the monsters in it, and those are nice. I don't have to read through each one of them. That'll drive you crazy and have me reading them to you. And at the end, they make it really nice. They give you a little area where they have magic items. So let's go down to the magic item stuff, and it tells you what treasures they go into each one. Like I said, the book is phenomenal. They do a great job. What's 5,000 gold piece treasure? And he really set this up to make it easy for people wanting to learn how to play the game. Here's a bunch of potions. Potions are easy because when you're playing as a game master, they get this amazing power, but it only lasts so long. So it doesn't keep them from being overpowered in your world, right? Makes it kind of fun. Scrolls the same way. Magic user have to, if they find a spell scroll, they can write down this stuff in their magic spell book and not use it. So there's an option they get. They have to find their spells. So this pretty much concludes pretty much, I like I said, all magic items and stuff. It makes it so much fun. Go buy this book and enjoy it. Even for a change of pace, because there's a lot of stuff that you can play a game so much that has all that stuff and you feel like you just want to play it. You don't want to have to, I got to look for this and add this to this and this and this. It could drive you crazy. This is a fun game where you just play and enjoy your time doing it. Like I said, it's a good pick-me-up game. You have a group of friends come over, hey, let's just play a game. Oh, I don't want to design. It takes too long. Look, let's put a timer on. 20 minutes, have to have your character design. We're just starting. Everybody has this book, right? That's one thing you can do. Have everyone roll each stat all the way down. I did this with a group of kids. They totally loved it. So everybody knew what everybody's writing, roll for strength. I put it on a whiteboard. It's fun. Every part of it can be fun if you do it right. All right. With that, interwebs, I know it was a long one. It's 45 minutes or so. I hope you have a wonderful day. And thanks for listening. And like I said, fantastic medieval adventure game, originally put together by Gary and Dave. And then it came out to Matt Finch, revived it. And then Charlie grabbed it and ran with it. Totally a fun play. Totally worthwhile. All right. Have a wonderful day. Bye.